I'm Maurice DuBois. Black history is American history. And you can find that rich culture and diversity right here throughout the 5 boroughs. In Harlem, on 5th Avenue at 142nd Street, we find the New York National Guard Armory, the home of a special group of men, black men, who were called up to arms to fight in World War I in a then segregated military that did not want their help on the front lines. So the unit fought for France. They were known by many names. They called themselves the Black Rattlers. In France, they were dubbed the Men of Bronze, but the Germans are the ones who gave them the name Hellfighters. The Harlem Hellfighters, or the 369th Infantry Regiment, is one of the most storied African-American combat units to serve in World War I. Those brave men were some of the first who fought to break down barriers. One of the most recognized figures, of course, who sparked change in America throughout the Civil Rights Movement is Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I sat down with his son, the human rights activist and philanthropist Martin Luther King III, and we discussed many topics, among them how his young daughter is embracing the movement. I want to start with your daughter. By the way, Martin Luther King's only grandchild, is your daughter Yolanda. She said she would apologize to your parents about the state of the world.
An apology to where we are right now as a nation and really as a world.
I mean, that literally hurt me to hear a child say that.
In theory, certainly what Dad and Mom did, our nation should be much further along. She said, you as older people hadn't gotten the job done. So we must do it ourselves.
It's a new year, and I think that we can really get a lot done.
She had more rights in 2008 when she was born than she does now. There were no voting restrictions. I mean, Voting Rights Act existed. Woman's autonomy rights to control her own body was struck down. And I think we as a nation would have been further in terms of the trajectory.
It was an absolute privilege to spend time with Martin Luther King III, from an intimate conversation to witnessing his command of a room of hundreds at St. Thomas Aquinas College in Sparkill, New York. He shared words of wisdom.
I just want you to understand the benefits of what made this country have immeasurable wealth. But it was the tragic institution, the most inhumane institution called slavery, that created this opportunity.
Deeper insights into the mindset of his dad.
After a speech, he'd go back into where the workers were and shake every hand. To him, everybody was important.
And he even had jokes.
My father, Martin Luther King Jr., skipped 3 grades, 1st, 7th, and 12th grade. Entered Morehouse College at 15 years old. Now, he didn't pass that to me. I didn't skip anything.
I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
I get goosebumps whenever I watch your dad's speeches. What's your reaction when you watch those films?
We listen with our ears, we hear with our heart. So I've listened to I Have a Dream 10,000 times, but I've only heard it 100.
Because I have a dream.
Whenever I hear it, then I move to tears.
What are your most vivid recollections of him as a little boy?
I remember seeing him literally walking up the stairs at our home, and it would look as if he was pulling big boulders, like he was just exhausted. When he opened the door and we said, "Dad, he's home, Dad." I mean, it was like, this is amazing. And that energy shifted.
You've been surrounded by brilliant women your entire life, right? Mom, your sisters, your wife, your daughter. Your mom would often say, this family is called. What do you mean by that?
I have an obligation to give something back to make community better. We use the phrase often around democracy to help create a more perfect union. And that's what we are, in a sense, seeking to do, to create a more perfect nation, a more perfect world. We may not ever get to perfection fully, but we can certainly create a better world for all of God's children.
In 1963, has a dream, right? He's full of optimism that we can overcome.
My poor little children,
will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
You go to 1965, he's still projecting optimism with the famous speech where he talked about, I know how long will it take.
How long? Not long. Yes, sir. Because no lie can live forever.
66, summer 66 in Chicago. I'm tired of marching.
Tired of marching for something that should have been mine at birth.
Now we're starting to feel frustration. You can really feel that as he says that. And finally, literally right before he died, the night before,
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper.
he held that word out there, paper, and it just sits there and it sends a shock through you.
He probably was far more of a revolutionary than given credit for. He never abandoned nonviolence, but he also was saying, we've got to take some dramatic steps. He talked about a radical revolution of values. He also used to say that violence is the language of those who are not heard. So he was always talking about the dignity and worth and the value of the human being.
And Martin III is currently focusing on an initiative to encourage young people like his daughter Yolanda, as well as educators and communities, to perform 100 million hours of service by what would have been his dad's 100th birthday in 2029. Ahead on CBS 2 celebrates Black History is American History, strength in the face of adversity.
There was resistance from people in the organization when I joined. There was resistance from some ladies on the line and folks around the country.
We'll meet the first Black Radio City Rockette, her message to dreamers of all ages. And we'll introduce you to a pioneer in filmmaking. As we head to break, and with the Oscars just weeks away, who is the first Black actress to take home the Oscar for Best Actress in a Lead Role? The answer when we return. The first Black actress to win the Oscar for Best Actress in a Lead Role. Halle Berry, the first and only Black woman to win the Oscar for Best Actress, which was for Monsters Ball. That was 23 years ago, back in 2001. Welcome back to Black History is American History. One of the very first Black filmmakers in history was Oscar Misho. He was a pioneer, and as CBS 2's Nick Calloway reports, paving the way for generations of filmmakers to follow in his footsteps.
It was the early days of filmmaking, black and white and silent. Oscar Misho used shoestring budgets and his imagination to direct and produce more than 40 motion pictures.
There were other people who were also doing it, but no one did it quite as well or nearly as prolifically as he did.
Misho's films explored taboo subjects like interracial marriage and lynching. They contradicted the negative stereotypes of African Americans featured in mainstream films at the time. Dr. Michelle Prettyman is assistant professor of communications and media studies at Fordham University.
And oftentimes they were meant to specifically correct things that they thought Hollywood just got wrong.
Misho was born in Illinois in 1884. His first film, The Homesteader, was the first to feature an all-black cast. In 1919, he filmed the critically acclaimed Within Our Gates in Fort Lee, New Jersey. It was considered the first motion picture town, long before Hollywood was Hollywood.
And he was one of the great stars of the
Nelson Page is executive director of the Barrymore Film Center in Fort Lee. Misho has a star on the Barrymore's Walk of Fame.
He became a great filmmaker. He became a true pioneer in the industry, not only because he made race pictures, but because he knew what his audiences needed to see, wanted to see.
Misho continued making films in New Jersey and New York for years to come. He lived in Harlem and finally in Montclair, New Jersey. Misho died in 1951.
I think his legacy is that he was the first, and for a good half a century, the best. And I think he carved out, a pathway for others to follow.
And they did follow. 100 years later, independent filmmakers find inspiration in Misho's work, including Academy Award-winning film director, Brooklyn's own Spike Lee.
Those of us who have studied films and those of us who are interested in Black film history and film history now know how impactful he was, that filmmakers who were working in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s could point to him and say, oh my gosh, there was a person before us.
Some of Misho's films are victims of time and were lost along the way, including The Homesteader. Others, like Within Our Gates, were preserved by the Library of Congress so they can be watched and studied for at least another 100 years. In Fort Lee, New Jersey, Nick Calloway, CBS 2 News.
Jennifer Jones paved the way for women of color on one of the biggest stages in the world. In 1987, she became the first black Radio City Rockette. CBS 2 photojournalist Lori Burnett shows us how she's inspiring children to follow their passion.
There I am. Being in the Super Bowl 22 halftime show was my first big job ever. And I remember the whole stadium just loving the Rockettes, and I was one of them. My name is Jennifer Jones. I'm the first African-American Radio City Music Hall Rockette. You went to go see them?
Yeah, me too.
You did? I wrote a children's book to inspire all of you to follow whatever passions and whatever love you want to do in life. That first day of dance class, I fell all the way in love with dancing. Can girls my color become dancers? I asked my mother that night. My parents, by knowing that I love dance, took me to see Broadway shows and showed me that girls like me can do anything that I dream of. For me, becoming a Rockette meant I would be a trailblazer. Since the dance company started performing in 1925, there had never been a black Rockette. There was resistance from people in the organization when I joined. There was resistance from some ladies on the line and folks around the country. But there was a lot of love that I received from around the country. There were people in the organization who did want me there, and some ladies on the line that thought it was about time a woman of color, a black woman, be able to dance on the line. When I look at the ladies today on the line, I think it's more diverse, and I think there's better representation.
The first time I met Jennifer Jones, we talked about the tights and just trying to get tights that were her skin color and how that was an issue at that time. And what I think is incredible is that from the moment I walked into this building as a Radio City Rockette, I had tights that matched my skin color. I had shoes that matched my skin color. Even the mesh on costumes was a perfect match for me. It started with Jennifer Jones, and just that one little seed that was planted, you see the growth from it, and you see dancers of all backgrounds.
Diversity is the fabric, it's a strong fabric of which we stand on. To be able to show representation for the children that sit in the audience and look at them in awe.
I'm just eternally grateful for Jennifer taking that first step and putting her foot in the door, and because of her, I'm able to be a representative. I know that I'm standing on her shoulders, and I know that I'm an extension of her every time I take the stage.
I open doors for women who look like me to be able to dance on the landmark stage of Radio City Music Hall. And I just wanted kids to remember, embrace your individuality, believe in your own potential, and always dream big. What do you like to do, Mary?
I like to do dance.
Yeah? Okay, Mary, keep dancing.
Now for a look at an iconic institution that is uniquely New York, the Apollo Theater, celebrating its 90th anniversary and doing it in a big way. CBS 2's Jesse Mitchell shows us how this landmark is expanding and renovating its space.
There's an extra buzz in the air of the historic Apollo Theater, and it's not coming from the old light fixtures.
If I could describe it, imagine butterflies in your stomach all the time. That's what it feels like, the energy around the building.
The Apollo's executive producer, Camila Forbes, escorted me a few doors down to show off the shining Victoria Theater, restored as part of the Apollo's expansion plan. Storytelling rap duo Soul Science Lab is bringing their first musical to the stage for the space's first performance. The Renaissance mixtape blends genres as the performers transport the audience through Harlem's history.
It's incredible to be here at this point in the same space, paying homage to them, but also bringing something new and pushing it into the future.
We're talking about Renaissance on Renaissance Radio.
Chen Lo and Asante Amin describe the experience in one word: quantum.
It feels quantum because it feels very much new, but it feels ancient at the same time. It feels like this is new territory, but it also feels like we've been here before.
A gallery exhibit in the lobby explores snapshots from each theater's iconic moments alongside daily life in Harlem across the decades.
Within all the change that's happening right now in Harlem, it is firmly rooted to consistently keep our mission alive and at the forefront, and that is the preservation but also the constant advancement and forward-looking of Black culture.
2 additional spaces at the Victoria allow the Apollo to invest in local artists and open opportunities for new events to connect to the community.
This is Apollo's stake in saying, despite whatever's happening in the world, we're going to continue to boldly dream and imagine a future for ourselves. And as long as we keep planting those like artistic seeds, it can happen.
Yeah, and a lot of young Black artists who are doing innovative work often don't get opportunities on this level.
Now the team will turn to the Apollo's main stage for extensive repairs there, including a reimagined lobby, complete with a cafe and welcoming windows.
With a lot of New York theaters, you can't really see in. You know, you just see like a peek in through the doorway, but our idea for this expansion is really to expand our lobby in a transparent way and inviting the rest of the community in.
Interactive kiosks will invite guests to feel inspired by the space and all its memories as they imagine the landmark's future impact.
Yes, we have been around for 90 years, but we as a staff now and leadership are committed to looking forward to the next 90.
In Harlem, Jessie Mitchell, CBS 2 News.
Ahead on CBS 2 celebrates Black History is American History.
My message with my artwork is to give the true story of what it means to be a Black American.
Stitch by stitch, layer by layer, we are taking a closer look at the art of quilting, and we'll introduce you to a hometown girl who's paying homage to the health fighters through her work. And who is the American ragtime and early jazz band leader of the Harlem Hellfighters? The answer when we return. Who is the American ragtime and early jazz band leader of the Harlem Hellfighters? Hellfighter James Reese Europe, depicted right here at the Armory, was one of the first African-American officers to lead troops into battle during World War I. He became the regimental jazz band leader and famously introduced jazz music to the French and the British. Now to a moment in time, woven into fabric, documenting the history of the Harlem Hellfighters. It is just one of the great pieces of quilting art from the textile artist Bisa Butler. CBS 2's Christy Kalishian spoke with the artist and took a look at the tradition of quilting.
Within the walls of textile artist Bisa Butler's Jersey City art studio, huge historic portraits, their quilt equivalents, and of course, the echoes of her long-armed sewing machine.
My message with my artwork is to give the true story of what it means to be a Black American.
Take a closer look at her work. Each and every detail tailored, literally, to fit several foot-long and wide quilts. Her vibrant portraits depicting African-American life have been featured on magazine covers and in museums nationwide, including her 2021 piece at the Smithsonian in D.C. depicting the Harlem Hellfighters.
They had been, in essence, forgotten. They're from the area that I've lived in my whole life.
Born in Orange, New Jersey, she grew up in South Orange, where she lives now. In school, she was never taught about the all-Black infantry regiment in World War I. She's using her art to make up for lost, less talked about parts of Black history. Each piece of fabric used here, a symbol.
That swirl fabric is a Nigerian tie-dye. If you drop a bead of water and it makes those rings, it's talking about how one person can make a big difference.
Also in her native Essex County, quilts are displayed at the West Orange Public Library, made by the Newark-based Nubian Heritage Quilters Guild.
African Americans have always quilted in this country. They had textile skills before they even came here or brought to this country. It's part of a legacy, you know.
The almost 30-year-old guild was founded by Carolyn Davis and Glendora Simonson. Both have generations of quilters in their families.
There's a frugality out of necessity, and it celebrates what a lot of women have done throughout their life.
The Guild is always welcoming newcomers. It uses the Sankofa symbol, originating in Ghana, meaning go back and get, represented by a bird looking back to pass a seed or tradition on to the next generation.
That's our mission statement, is to learn from the past to teach the future.
A vital patch forever woven into the fabric of Black history. In New Jersey, Christy Kalishian, CBS 2 News.
And the Harlem Hellfighters continue their work across the world as well, never forgetting the importance of the place this regiment holds in history.
It's an unparalleled example of the fight for freedom, and that's something to be proud of. And a lot of our stories are not always told from the perspective of those who've achieved under extraordinary circumstances. The reason we should preserve and promote this history is because it gives all of America a great source of pride. It shows that we are bigger and broader than our mistakes.
I take that pride in everything that we do, because now I am the modern face of the Harlem Hellfighters, and I have to take the legacy that they brought and bring it forward. Just like the Harlem Hellfighters before, they fought for their respect, they fought for their civil liberties. We're kind of doing the same thing, just in a different era.
If you would like to send the brave servicemen and women a letter, you can do so by scanning the QR code on the screen. Thank you for showing your support for military families. I'm Maurice DuBois, and thank you for watching. CBS 2 News celebrates Black History is American History.